What's going on, everybody? It's Kurt, and welcome to the show, episode 15 now. I'm pretty stoked. On this episode, I'm going to be talking about leadership. What the heck is this topic? I mean, people talk about it all the time, but really, what is leadership? What does it mean? What does it mean to be a leader? What does it mean to lead? And all the stuff that goes into that. So stay tuned because we're going to really get into some cool stuff. Cool. So leadership. Well, I've been in the corporate world for over 10 years now, and I've been in sales, I've been in marketing, I've been in operations, I've been in customer service, and in all these different arenas, there's always been this talk of being a leader, of kind of standing out, of stepping up, and also kind of like going through different literature. I've read a lot about leadership. But to be honest, I think it's really misunderstood by a large majority of individuals. Leadership is really about a couple things. So we're gonna dive into that right now. And we're gonna jump into the content that really makes sense to look at. So when I looked at the definition of what leadership was, it is basically to lead, which is kind of pointless. It's not really gonna help us. But when I looked at leading, and what that all meant, it's basically kind of directing priorities and directing towards what's important. And when I looked at what was the definition for importance, things of great significance is what stood out. So if you distill down leadership, it's the act of leading. And if you look at leading, it's directing towards things of importance. And if you look at importance, it's really things of great significance. So it's a bit of a loop, but by and large, leadership is about keeping yourself and others on a priority. It's about getting them to stay focused on what is the most significant, most important thing to be done. And the way I see it, that makes a lot of sense. In my business, I have a couple of leaders that run different parts of our organization. We have actually four direct reports that report to me, and then I've got a couple other small kind of side projects like this video, for example, where I kind of work directly with people. But by and large, in those direct report relationships that I have with the people that I manage, it's all about priorities. We're always focusing and refocusing on priorities. So I want to pivot here briefly into an idea that I think is really valuable that I picked up from Grant Cardone, and that is the idea of control. I think with leadership, a big piece of it is just having control. It's like having control of whatever it is that you're driving. So if it is, in our case, it's a marketing campaign. It's like understanding the metrics, understanding what the actual performance is, and having control over the creative, over the way the traffic is coming in, the way the traffic is going to the partner that we're advertising with. And really, the more control you have over that, the more leadership you're gonna take in that role. Other parts of the business, having control. I wanna know everything. I wanna have control over the actual information of what we're doing. I wanna be aware. I've talked about this before, but like when you're trying to make changes in your life, one of the first things you need to do whenever you're looking at a map of a situation is know where you are on that map. If you're west of your target and you're trying to get to this target, but you are west and you don't think you're west, and you start going west thinking that you're east, you're not going to get there. So the point is, you really need to have control over the information and the status of, frankly, your life, of your personal situation, as well as of your career or your business. And if you're not in control, the first thing to do is get information. Get the information that you need to kind of give you a point of reference on your map of where you are. Because having control is really important. It's critical. Like if you're in a business and you don't have control over your team, over your leaders, over what your strategy is, you're going to be in a really bad place. So leadership is really, in my opinion, largely based on having control. It's having control. Think about a group of people you've been with where you had an activity or everyone was together and you're trying to get things going in one direction, break people up into teams, do any event where there's like lots of people. What happens? Who becomes the leader? It's typically the person that takes control. The person that takes control of the situation, that takes the initiative to put things in place, they naturally become that leader. And so when you think about your life and where you're leading and not leading, you want to think about where you're controlling and not controlling both yourself and the situations that you want to be involved with. The other piece of it is having priorities. So in that definition that we broke down, leading towards things of significance, it's all about having priorities and holding those top of mind. Because if you don't have priorities, if you're not putting your values and your goals right in front of you on your radar at all times, you're going to drift. We're human beings, and I think we're kind of hardwired to some degree to focus on the short-term gratification and not these long-term goals. For me, I tend to struggle with goals that are like more than 3 months out. Whenever I see a goal, or I try to work on framing up a goal, whenever I try to work on a goal that is bigger, something that's more than just a few months, and it's something where I can't quite see the actual map, the road of how to get there, I tend to tune out. I tend to want to distract, to divert, to not really stay focused and on the path. And I think it's really important as a leader for yourself, because self-leadership is probably the most critical piece of all of this, and probably where you're going to be the best leader and then lead others to come with you. Being a self-leader is really about keeping your goals and your values and what's important to you at the top of your priorities. And I've seen people who are very successful, and a lot of them do this. They write their goals every day. They refine them. They list off their values. They're very, very specific. If you don't know how to write goals, just take out a sheet of paper and write what you want. That's writing goals. If you don't know what a value is, take out a sheet of paper and start writing what's valuable to you in your life. What do you value the most? What do you spend your time thinking about, wanting, really desiring? That's something you might value. Now, you can consciously change those things through rewriting them, or you can keep them. But the point is, as a leader, we're talking about leadership. It's all about taking control, knowing where you're at, and being clear on your priorities. Because if you have all those pieces, then there's really no excuse not to be leading yourself. Now, there's a final piece to this, and that's actually doing the work, actually being the leader that you need to be. And that comes down to putting in effort. That comes down to developing discipline, self-discipline, being consistent, working through mini habits, things that can get you to where you want to go, tools, tricks, skills, things that actually keep you on track, keep you focused on actually building and focusing towards the priorities that you're leading yourself towards. Now, in terms of leading other people, I think if you become a really strong leader of yourself, then leadership amongst others is going to be easy. If you look at people who have a really strong cause, who are really disciplined, really focused, it's not hard for others to be attracted to that and for them to really just naturally lead them.
Times may be dark, but we are Earth's greatest hope. Look around you. A gathering of noble guardians new and old.
Okay, listen up. You're a bunch of dirty misfits, but you're all that's left, so you'll have to do.
I know you look to me in times of peril, but this is not my battle alone.
Which means if I don't see you out there, I'll kill you myself.
So I ask you, who will stand with me?
Yeah! Really, guys?
That was inspiring.
So, to put this thing in full perspective, leadership is really about taking the initiative and moving towards what's most significant. And when you think about that, to take the initiative, you have to have control over what it is that you're trying to actually direct. And so control is really the big piece of this, having control of the information, the status of what's going on, knowing where you're at, and then being able to really drive all of that together into the priorities that are most important to both yourself, the business, to the sort of goals that you're working on, and to drive all of that. So I'd love to hear your opinions. What sort of resources have you read? Have you watched? Have you listened to that have really helped you become a really great leader? Are there people in your life that are influencing you? For me, I have, some fairly large resources that I've followed. People like Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn in particular is a really big influence for me. And these individuals have written, they've put out audiobooks, content like that. I can link that in the post. But I'd love to hear what you have to say. What is really inspiring you as far as leadership goes? And what are your thoughts on the topic of what makes a good leader and what the whole idea of leadership really is? So until next time, thanks for tuning in and keep crushing.